Chapter 9 of Some Problems of Philosophy, a Beginning of an Introduction to Philosophy, by William James. This LibriVox recording is in the public domain. The Problem of Novelty. The impotence to explain being which we have attributed to all philosophers is, it will be recollected, a conceptual impotence. It is when thinking abstractly of the whole of being at once, as it confronts us ready made, that we feel our powerlessness so acutely. Possibly, if we followed the empiricist method, considering the parts rather than the whole, and imagining ourselves inside of them perceptually, the subject might defy us less provokingly. We are thus brought back to the problem with which Chapter 7 left off. When perceptible amounts of new phenomenal being come to birth, must we hold them to be in all points predetermined and necessary outgrowths of the being already there? Or shall we rather admit the possibility that originality may thus instil itself into reality? If we take concrete perceptual experience, the question can be answered in only one way. The same returns not, save to bring the different. Time keeps budding into new moments, every one of which presents a content which in its individuality never was before and will never be again. Of no concrete bit of experience was an exact duplicate ever framed. My youth, writes Delboeuf, has it not taken flight, carrying away with it love, illusion, poetry, and freedom from care, and leaving with me instead science, austere always, often sad and morose, which sometimes I would willingly forget, which repeats to me hour by hour its grave lessons, or chills me by its threats? Will time, which untiringly piles deaths on births, and births on deaths, ever remake an Aristotle or an Archimedes, a Newton or a Descartes? Can our earth ever cover itself again with those gigantic ferns, those immense equisetaceans, in the midst of which the same antediluvian monsters will crawl and wallow as they did of yore? No, what has been will not, cannot be again. Time moves on with an unfaltering tread, and never strikes twice an identical hour. The instants of which the existence of the world is composed are all dissimilar, and whatever may be done, something remains that can never be reversed. The everlasting coming of concrete novelty into being is so obvious that the rationalizing intellect, bent ever on explaining what is by what was, and having no logical principle but identity to explain by, treats the perceptual flux as a phenomenal illusion, resulting from the unceasing recombination, in new forms of mixture, of unalterable elements, coeval with the world. These elements are supposed to be the only real beings, and for the intellect once grasped by the vision of them, there can be nothing genuinely new under the sun. The world's history, according to molecular science, signifies only the redistribution of the unchangeable atoms of the primal fire mist, parting and meeting so as to appear to us spectators in the infinitely diversified configurations which we name as processes and things. Footnote: The atomistic philosophy, which has proved so potent a scientific instrument of explanation, was first formulated by Democritus, who died 370 B.C., his life overlapping that of Aristotle, who took what on the whole may be called a biological view of the world, and for whom forms were as real as elements. The conflict of the two modes of explanation has lasted to our day, for some chemists still defend the Aristotelian tradition, which the authority of Descartes had interrupted for so long, and deny our right to say that water is not a simple entity, or that oxygen and hydrogen atoms persist in it unchanged. The atomistic view assumes that when in iron oxide, for example, all the sensible properties both of iron and oxygen have vanished. Iron and oxygen are nevertheless there, but now manifest other properties. We are so used to this assumption that it is hard for us to feel its oddity, nay, even its absurdity. When, however, we reflect that all we know of a given kind of matter is its properties, we realize that the assertion that matter is still there, but without any of those properties, is not far removed from nonsense. The whole notion of the eternal fixity of elements is melting away before the new discoveries about radiant matter. So far as physical nature goes, few of us experience any temptation to postulate real novelty. The notion of eternal elements and their mixture serves us in so many ways that we adopt unhesitatingly the theory that primordial being is inalterable in its attributes as well as in its quantity, and that the laws by which we describe its habits are uniform in the strictest mathematical sense. These are the absolute conceptual foundations, we think, spread beneath the surface of perceptual variety. It is when we come to human lives that our point of view changes. It is hard to imagine that really our own subjective experiences are only molecular arrangements, even though the molecules be conceived as beings of a psychic kind. A material fact may indeed be different from what we feel it to be. But what sense is there in saying that a feeling, which has no other nature than to be felt, is not as it is felt? Psychologically considered, our experiences resist conceptual reduction, and our fields of consciousness, taken simply as such, remain just what they appear, even though facts of a molecular order should prove to be the signals of the appearance. Biography is the concrete form in which all that is immediately given. The perceptual flux is the authentic stuff of each of our biographies, and yields a perfect effervescence of novelty all the time. New men and women, books, accidents, events, inventions, enterprises, burst unceasingly upon the world. It is vain to resolve these into ancient elements, or to say that they belong to ancient kinds, so long as no one of them in its full individuality ever was here before or will ever come again. Men of science and philosophy, the moment they forget their theoretic abstractions, live in their biographies as much as anyone else, and believe as naively that fact even now is making, and that they themselves, by doing original work, help to determine what the future shall become. I have already compared the live or perceptual order with the conceptual order from this point of view. Conception knows no way of explaining save by deducing the identical from the identical. So if the world is to be conceptually rationalized, no novelty can really come. This is one of the traits in that general bankruptcy of conceptualism which I enumerated in chapter 5. Conceptualism can name change and growth, but can translate them into no terms of its own, and is forced to contradict the indestructible sense of life within us by denying that reality grows. It may seem to the youthful student a rather far cry from the question of the possibility of novelty to the problem of the infinite, but in the history of speculation the two problems have been connected. Novelty seems to violate continuity. Continuity seems to involve infinitely shaded gradation. Infinity connects with number, and number with fact in general, for facts have to be numbered. It has thus come to pass that the non-existence of an infinite number has been held to necessitate the finite character of the constitution of fact, and along with this its discontinuous genesis, or in other words, its coming into being by discrete increments of novelty, however small. Thus we find the problem of the infinite already lying across our path. It will be better at this point to interrupt our discussion of the more enveloping question of novelty at large, and to get the minor problem out of our way first. I turn then to the problem of the infinite. End of chapter 9.